The arrival. The Sirax warships hung in orbit around Veyron like obsidian daggers against the blue-green planet. There were 17 of them, massive, angular vessels that seemed to absorb rather than reflect the light of the system's star. They had arrived 3 standard weeks ago, and since then, the people of Veyron had learned what so many other species across the galaxy already knew. Resistance against the Sirax Empire was futile. Commander Kell of the Veyronian Defense Force stood at the viewport of the last functioning orbital platform, watching as another settlement on the surface burned. The Sirax didn't simply conquer, they harvested. Resources, technology, and often entire populations disappeared into their ships, never to be seen again. 17 worlds had fallen before them in the last decade. Veyron would be the 18th. "Commander," said Lieutenant Val, her silver-flecked skin paling as she approached. "Central Command reports the northern continent's defenses have fallen. The refugee centers are being evacuated to the underground caverns, but..." She didn't need to finish. The underground caverns might buy the civilians a few days, nothing more. Kell's four-fingered hand clenched into a fist. "And our remaining ships. 7 functional vessels, sir. Not enough to even scratch their fleet." Kell was about to order the final evacuation of the defense platform when a proximity alert blared across the command center. "Unknown vessel detected," shouted the sensor officer. "Emerging from..." "Sir, it's not using any known form of FTL travel." On the main view screen, a tear in space itself seemed to form, not the familiar flash of a jump engine or the distortion of a full drive, but something entirely different. Through this spatial anomaly emerged a single ship. It was smaller than the Sirax dreadnoughts but sleek and predatory in design, with a gunmetal hull that gleamed under the starlight. No visible weapons or engine ports, yet it moved with incredible precision, coming to a stop just beyond the Sirax blockade. "Configuration unknown," reported the sensor officer. "No match in our databases." "Are they broadcasting?" asked Kell, a faint glimmer of hope kindling in his chest. "Yes, sir. On all frequencies. It's in a language I've never heard before." The communications officer worked frantically at her console before looking up in surprise. "The translation matrix is adapting. Audio coming through now." A clear, determined voice filled the command center. "This is Captain Alina Wright of the Earth Alliance vessel Dauntless to all Sirax forces. You are engaged in hostile actions against a sovereign world. Withdraw immediately or face consequences." Silence fell across the command center. In the 8 years since the Sirax had begun their campaign of conquest, no one had ever heard of a species called human or an Earth Alliance. "Open a channel to the unknown vessel," ordered Kell. Before his communications officer could comply, the view screen changed to show the bridge of the alien ship. At its center stood a bipedal being with light brown skin and dark hair pulled back from a face that seemed both alien and eerily similar to Veyronian physiology. The most striking difference was the eyes, a deep brown instead of the silver pupils all Veyronians possessed. "This is Commander Kell of the Veyronian Defense Force. We welcome your assistance, Captain Wright, though I fear you've arrived too late. The Sirax outnumber you 17 to 1. The human captain's lips curved upward slightly. "Numbers aren't everything, Commander. We've been tracking the Sirax activities for some time now. Today, their expansion stops." "The Sirax fleet is moving," interrupted the sensor officer. "They're converging on the Earth vessel." On the tactical display, Kell watched as the massive Sirax ships formed an attack pattern, surrounding the lone human vessel. "Captain Wright," said Kell urgently, "you must retreat. No single ship can withstand." The first Sirax beam weapon fired, a lance of crimson energy that should have vaporized the smaller ship instantly. Instead, just before impact, a shimmering field surrounded the Dauntless. The energy weapon seemed to flow around the field, its power dissipating harmlessly into space. "What in the 7 moons?" whispered Val. The Dauntless moved with impossible agility for a vessel its size, accelerating directly toward the nearest Sirax dreadnought. As it closed distance, panels along its hull slid open to reveal weapons unlike anything Kel had ever seen. Not the familiar energy beams or mass drivers, but something that seemed to distort the very fabric of space around the target. When they fired, the effect was immediate and devastating. The Sirax shield technology, which had proven impervious to Veronian weapons, flickered and failed. Sections of the dreadnought's hull simply ceased to exist, as though they had been surgically removed from reality itself. Graviton weaponry, explained Captain Wright over the still-open channel. It doesn't destroy matter so much as relocate it to another dimensional plane. 2 more Sirax vessels moved to intercept, unleashing their full arsenal against the Dauntless. Again, the shield technology held, the energy dissipating around the human ship like water flowing around a stone. "Commander," said Captain Wright, her voice calm despite the battle raging around her vessel, "I'd like to send a delegation to your platform. We have much to discuss if we're going to liberate your world." Kel could hardly believe what he was witnessing. In the span of minutes, this unknown ship had done more damage to the Sirax fleet than the entire Veronian armada had managed in weeks of fighting. "Of course, Captain. We'll prepare for your arrival immediately." The shuttle that departed from the Dauntless was as sleek and advanced as its mothership. It docked with practiced precision at the platform's main airlock. Kel and his senior officers waited as the pressure equalized and the doors slid open. 4 humans stepped through, led by a tall, imposing figure that Kel immediately recognized as Captain Wright from their communication. Up close, the similarities and differences between their species became more apparent. The humans were slightly taller, their skin lacking the silvery luminescence of Veronians, but they moved with a familiar grace. "Commander Kel," said Captain Wright, extending a hand in what was clearly a formal greeting gesture. "It's an honor to meet the defenders of Veron." Kel mirrored the gesture, taking the captain's hand carefully. "The honor is ours, Captain. Though I confess, until today, we had no knowledge of humanity's existence. That was by design," said one of the other humans, an older male with gray in his dark hair. "I'm Dr. Marcus Chen, Chief Scientist. We've been observing galactic affairs from the shadows for nearly a century." As they walked toward the command center, Wright explained further. "Earth is located in what your star charts would consider a spatial anomaly, a pocket of space partially shielded from normal detection methods. We discovered faster-than-light travel 50 years ago, but chose to remain hidden while we studied the galaxy. When the Sirax began their conquest, we accelerated our technological development." "Why reveal yourselves now?" asked Lieutenant Fall. "Because we're ready," said Wright simply, "and because no species should face extinction alone." In the command center, Dr. Chen activated a holographic display showing detailed scans of the Sirax fleet. Their technology is impressive but predictable. They rely heavily on quantum lock shield generators that make them nearly invulnerable to conventional attacks. "We've noticed," said Kel dryly. "Our weapons barely scratch their defenses." "Your weapons target the shields directly," said the third human, a woman introduced as Commander Rivera, tactical officer of the Dauntless. "Our approach is different. The graviton weapons don't try to overwhelm their shields. They bypass them entirely by manipulating the space-time around the target. That's why they're retreating," observed Vol, pointing to the tactical display where the remaining Sirax vessels were pulling back to a defensive formation. "They've never encountered a threat they couldn't simply overwhelm." "They're regrouping," corrected Wright. "The Sirax don't retreat, they adapt, which is why we need to act quickly. Commander Kel, what forces do you still have available?" Kel's expression darkened. 7 warships, this defense platform, and perhaps 2,000 ground troops. The rest of our military was destroyed in the initial invasion. And civilians, approximately 40 million, most now hiding in underground shelters. The Sirax have already harvested nearly 10 million from the northern continent. Wright's face hardened. "Then our priority is clear. Stop any further harvesting and disable their fleet before reinforcements arrive." Reinforcements. Kel felt a chill run through him. Dr. Chen nodded gravely. Our intelligence suggests the Seracs have called for their main battle group. We estimate 3 days before they arrive. A fleet 10 times the size of what's currently orbiting your world. The command center fell silent as the implications sank in. Even with the advanced technology of the Dauntless, such numbers would be overwhelming. Then we have 3 days to disable their current fleet and prepare for a larger battle, said Wright, her tone leaving no room for doubt. Commander Kel, we'll need to integrate our systems with yours. The Dauntless carries specialized equipment that can upgrade your remaining vessels with our shield technology. And weapons? Asked Vol, hopefully. The graviton technology is too complex to transfer quickly, said Commander Rivera. But we can enhance your existing weapons to be more effective against their shields. For the first time since the Seracs arrived, Kel felt something beyond despair. It wasn't quite hope. Not yet, but it was the possibility of hope. There's something else you should know, said the fourth human, who had remained quiet until now. He was introduced as Lieutenant Sado, Intelligence Officer. The Seracs aren't just conquering worlds for resources or territory. They're running from something that destroyed their original homeworld centuries ago. They're building an empire not just for power, but for survival. Does that excuse genocide? Asked Kel sharply. No, said Wright firmly. It explains their desperation, but it doesn't justify their methods. Every species faces extinction eventually. It's how we face that threat that defines us. As if to emphasize her point, the platform shuddered as a distant explosion lit up the viewport. One of the retreating Seracs vessels had fired on a civilian transport attempting to flee the planet. We need to move now, said Wright. Commander Kel, have your remaining ships rendezvous with the Dauntless. Dr. Chen will coordinate the technology transfer. Commander Rivera, and I will develop a tactical plan to neutralize their harvesters on the surface. As the humans returned to their shuttle, Kel walked alongside Captain Wright. You said you've been watching the galaxy for decades. Why choose our world to make your stand? Why now? Wright paused at the airlock, her expression solemn. Because every resistance has to start somewhere, Commander. The Seracs have conquered 17 worlds before yours. Veyron will not be the 18th. Instead, it will be remembered as the place where the tide turned. As the shuttle departed, Kel watched it return to the Dauntless, which now hovered protectively between Veyron and the regrouping Seracs fleet. For the first time in weeks, he allowed himself to consider a future beyond mere survival. The humans had arrived, and with them, the first real chance to fight back. The turning point. Dawn broke over Veyron's southern continent, bathing the crystalline spires of the capital city in golden light. But the beauty of the sunrise was overshadowed by the massive Seracs harvesters that hovered above the city like malevolent storm clouds. From the command deck of the reconfigured Veyronian defense platform, Captain Alina Wright watched tactical displays showing the movements of both Allied and enemy forces. The modifications to your ships are complete, reported Dr. Chen, looking up from his workstation. The adaptive shield technology has been successfully integrated into all 7 vessels. Commander Kel nodded gratefully. My crews report the systems are functioning beyond expectations. Still, 7 ships against 15. 8 ships, corrected Wright. The Dauntless will lead the assault. In the 48 hours since the humans had arrived, they had worked tirelessly alongside the Veyronians. Engineer teams from the Dauntless had upgraded the defensive systems of the Veyronian warships, while ground forces had established secure evacuation corridors for civilians still trapped in urban centers. But time was running out. The Seracs had pulled back their fleet into a defensive formation, clearly waiting for reinforcements. According to the latest intelligence from Lieutenant Sado, the Seracs battle group was now less than 24 hours away. Captain, said Commander Rivera, approaching with a holographic projector. We've completed our analysis of the Seracs command protocols. She activated the device, displaying a complex network of communication signals between the Seracs vessels. As we suspected, they operate on a hierarchical control system. Each dreadnought coordinates the actions of 2 or 3 smaller vessels, and all of them receive primary directives from this ship. She highlighted the largest vessel at the center of the formation. "The command carrier," murmured Kel. "We identified it early in the invasion, but could never get close enough to target it." "That's our primary objective," said Wright decisively. "Dr. Chen believes he's identified a critical vulnerability in their system." The scientist stepped forward, adjusting the hologram to zoom in on the command carrier. The Seracs use a quantum-entangled communication network to coordinate their fleet actions. It's instantaneous and theoretically impossible to jam or intercept. However, he highlighted a section of the ship. All entangled particles must be synchronized through a central quantum fold generator. In simple terms, translated Commander Rivera, cut off the head, and the body becomes disorganized. Lieutenant Val looked skeptical. "Even with your technology, approaching the command carrier would be suicide. They've surrounded it with their strongest vessels." "That's why we won't approach directly," said Wright, a determined gleam in her eyes. "Commander Kel, this is where your knowledge of the planet becomes essential." Kel adjusted the holographic display to show Veyron's unusual orbital mechanics. "What did you have in mind?" "The Seracs rely on precision and coordination," explained Wright. "What happens when we introduce chaos into their carefully ordered system?" Captain Wright stood on the bridge of the Dauntless, the advanced warship humming with energy as it prepared for battle. Through the view screen, she could see the 7 Veyronian vessels taking their positions, their hulls now enhanced with the distinctive shimmer of human shield technology. "All ships report ready, Captain," said her first officer, Commander Takashi. Wright nodded. "And our special cargo?" "Deployed as planned," confirmed Commander Rivera from Tactical. "Lieutenant Sato reports his team is in position." "Very well." Wright settled into her command chair. "Open a channel to Commander Kel." The Veyronian commander appeared on screen, his silver eyes reflecting the same determined focus that Wright felt. "All preparations are complete, Captain," he reported. "My people are ready to follow your lead." "Remember, Commander, timing is everything. The Seracs expect us to confront them directly. When the moment comes, your ships must execute their jumps with perfect coordination." "We won't fail," Kel promised. "My pilots have trained for this maneuver all their lives, though they never expected to use it in combat." Wright gave a respectful nod before turning to her crew. "Battle stations. Initiate Phase 1." The Dauntless surged forward, seemingly on a direct course for the Seracs blockade. As predicted, the enemy vessels immediately began to reposition, creating a wall of firepower directly in their path. "They're taking the bait," observed Rivera. "Defensive formation exactly as predicted." "Maintain course and speed," ordered Wright calmly. "Let them think we're planning a frontal assault." On the tactical display, 15 red markers represented the Seracs fleet, now forming a tiered defensive wall. Behind them, safely protected, was the massive command carrier. "Range to enemy fleet, 30,000 kilometers and closing," reported the helm officer. "Energy buildup detected," warned Rivera. "They're preparing to fire." Wright watched the distance counting down. "Hold course." At 20,000 kilometers, the first volley of Seracs energy weapons lanced out across space. The Dauntless's shields flared brilliantly as they absorbed and redirected the energy, but the impact was still felt throughout the ship. "Shields holding at 87%, reported the engineering officer. "Return fire," ordered Wright. "Target their forward vessels only." The Dauntless's graviton weapons activated, creating distortions in space-time that bypassed the Serac shields. 2 enemy vessels suffered significant damage, their formations wavering. "Enemy fleet adjusting formation," reported Rivera. "They're concentrating their forces to protect their damaged ships." "Perfect," murmured Wright. "They still think this is about brute force." She opened a channel to the Veyronian fleet. "Commander Kel, execute Phase 2." On the display, the 7 Veronian warships suddenly disappeared from their holding positions, using their jump drives to reposition instantaneously. They reappeared not in front of the Seracs blockade, but behind it, directly surrounding the command carrier. "Surprise," whispered Wright, before raising her voice. "All ships, fire at will." The Veronian vessels unleashed their enhanced weapons against the suddenly exposed command carrier. Its shields held initially, but the concentrated assault from multiple directions began to create fluctuations in the defensive field. Meanwhile, the Dauntless accelerated to maximum speed, diving straight toward the now disorganized Seracs formation. The enemy vessels, caught between defending their command carrier and countering the Dauntless, fell into disarray. "The Seracs fleet is breaking formation," reported Rivera with satisfaction. "Their coordinated defense is collapsing." Lieutenant Sato, Wright opened a secure channel. "You're cleared for Phase 3. Deep within the massive Seracs command carrier, a small infiltration team led by Lieutenant Sato had been waiting for this moment. Using specialized stealth technology, they had allowed themselves to be harvested along with a group of Veronian civilians, smuggling critical equipment past the Seracs defenses. "Acknowledged, Captain," came Sato's quiet response. "Package is being delivered now." Aboard the command carrier, Sato's team activated a quantum disruptor, a device specifically designed by Dr. Chen to interfere with the Seracs coordination system. Within seconds, the effect rippled throughout the enemy fleet. Ships that had been operating as a single organism suddenly found themselves isolated, their actions uncoordinated. On the Dauntless's tactical display, Wright watched with grim satisfaction as chaos spread through the enemy formation. Several Seracs vessels collided while attempting to reposition, while others fired on empty space where Allied ships had been moments before. "It's working," reported Rivera. "Their quantum-entangled network is breaking down." Wright nodded. "Signal all ships. Execute Phase 4. The battle that followed was unlike anything Veron had witnessed in its long history. The Dauntless carved through the disorganized Seracs fleet like a scalpel, its graviton weapons creating gaps in reality through which enemy vessels partially disappeared, decks, weapon systems, and engine sections vanishing into other dimensions. The Veronian ships, though less advanced, used their superior knowledge of local space to devastating effect. They executed complex maneuvers around Veron's 3 moons, using the gravitational fields to slingshot themselves at impossible angles, striking Seracs vessels from directions their sensors couldn't track. "The command carrier's shields are failing," reported Rivera after 30 minutes of intense combat. Sato's team reports they've secured the central control deck. "Open a channel to the Seracs fleet," ordered Wright. When the communication system activated, she stood from her command chair. "Attention, Seracs vessels. Your command structure has been compromised. Your fleet is in disarray. Surrender now, and you will be treated according to galactic conventions of war." For a long moment, there was no response. Then, one by one, the energy signatures of the Seracs vessels began to power down, all except 3 dreadnoughts that continued to fight. "The remaining vessels are attempting to reach the harvesters on the surface," warned Rivera. "They're going to try to take as many Veronians as possible before retreating," Wright realized. "Commander Kell, can your ships intercept?" "Already moving, Captain," responded the Veronian commander. "But we may not reach them in time." Wright made a quick decision. "Helm, set course for atmospheric entry. We're going after them ourselves." The Dauntless was not designed for planetary operations, but its advanced propulsion system allowed it to function within Veron's atmosphere. As the sleek warship descended through the clouds, it presented an awe-inspiring sight to the Veronians below. A silver sentinel pursued by trails of fire, diving to intercept the Seracs harvesters that were accelerating their collection operations. The first harvester was already lifting off, its massive hold filled with thousands of captured civilians. Wright ordered precision strikes against its propulsion systems, carefully avoiding the sections containing prisoners. The crippled vessel settled back to the ground. where Veronian resistance fighters swarmed aboard to free their people. The remaining 2 harvesters abandoned their collection efforts and attempted to escape, but found themselves caught between the Dauntless above and the approaching Veronian warships. Faced with no alternative, they powered down their systems in surrender. By nightfall, the skies above Veyron were clear of Sirax vessels for the first time in weeks. Lieutenant Sato, freshly returned from the command carrier with his infiltration team, joined them at the central console. "Captain, you should see this." He activated a data crystal taken from the Sirax vessel, projecting a galactic map unlike any the Veronians had seen before. "This is their invasion plan," he explained. Veyron was just one of dozens of worlds targeted for harvesting in this sector alone. Wright studied the map grimly, and each harvested world provides them resources to target 2 more. Exponential expansion. "But why?" asked Lieutenant Fall. "What drives them to such systematic conquest?" "Fear," said Sato simply. "We found their historical records. 3 centuries ago, their original homeworld was destroyed by a species they call the Void. They've been running and building strength ever since, harvesting resources and populations to create what they consider a defensive empire." "Defensive?" Kell's voice was sharp with disbelief. "They've destroyed 17 civilizations. In their minds, it's justifiable, sacrificing others to ensure their own survival," explained Wright. "The oldest motivation in the universe." Dr. Chen had been analyzing the Sirax data further. According to these calculations, they've established major fortifications in at least 6 sectors. Even with our technology, confronting their empire directly would be impossible, finished Commander Rivera. At least for now. A contemplative silence fell over the group as they considered the scale of the threat. It was Kell who finally broke it. "Then we don't confront them directly," he said. "We do what you did here, target their command structure, disrupt their coordination. And most importantly, we warn other worlds of their approach." Wright nodded slowly, a plan forming in her mind. Not just warn them, arm them. The Sirax rely on their technological superiority. If we can spread defensive capabilities throughout threatened systems, "You would share your technology so freely?" asked Vol, surprised. "Most species guard their advances jealously." "Humanity has hidden long enough," said Wright firmly. "We developed our capabilities in isolation, watching as species after species fell to threats like the Sirax. No more." She turned to face Kell directly. "Commander, I believe this is the beginning of something much larger than liberating a single world." "An alliance," said Kell, understanding immediately. "The framework already exists," interjected Dr. Chen. "The Dauntless carries diplomatic protocols for establishing formal relations with alien species. We've been preparing for this moment for decades." Before Kell could respond, the command center's alert system activated. Long-range sensors had detected multiple spatial distortions forming at the edge of the system. The Sirax reinforcements had arrived. 23 vessels, reported the sensor officer. Heavy dreadnought configuration. Instead of concern, Wright felt a surge of determination. Perfect timing. "Commander Kell, shall we show them what our new alliance is capable of?" As the defenders of Veyron prepared to meet this new threat, a message was already being transmitted from the Dauntless to Earth, the first report of humanity's emergence onto the galactic stage, and the beginning of a resistance that would spread across the stars. On the surface of Veyron, civilians emerged from their shelters to look up at skies no longer dominated by Sirax warships. Among them was a young Veronian who pointed excitedly at a streak of light arcing across the atmosphere, the human vessel Dauntless, leading a combined fleet to defend their world. "Who are they?" asked the child. An elder Veronian, who had witnessed the arrival of the humans days before, smiled as he watched the distant battle unfold. "They call themselves humanity," he said, "and they have changed everything." In the command center, Captain Wright and Commander Kell stood side by side, watching as their combined forces moved to intercept the disorganized Sirax reinforcements. Where once there had been only despair, now there was purpose. Where there had been isolation, now there was alliance. The edge of extinction had become the dawn of resistance.